Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time and joining us for this session. My name is Sarah Shuja, and I am a marketing manager at McGraw Hill. We're currently, just a bit of a background, we're running two webinar series right now. So we're doing Succeeding at STEM with Inspire Science and Reveal Math. The session that we will be covering today is Small Steps to NGSS Success. And tomorrow we have another one that is for Student-Centered Learning will Reveal Math. My colleague or I will drop the link for the session in case you want to attend the session that is tomorrow. But just to give you a brief overview before what we're going to cover in the next 60 minutes today, like I said, it's going to be about next generation science standards. We all kind of know what next generation science standards are, or NGSS, but how can you actually integrate them in your classroom? Do you find it difficult? And what are the best practices? What can you do about it? And what we're going to talk about today, not we, actually Jason, is going to talk about small steps that you can take to head in that direction. How can you implement it in your classroom, really? So he's going to be talking about some practices, share best practices, some ideas. And I don't want to give this away, but there's also going to be a resource kit that will be provided to you at the end of the session. So make sure you stick around till the end. And without further ado, I just want to welcome you all again, those of you who have just joined us. I'm Sarah Shuja, and I'm your moderator today, along with my colleague, Hamad Khilji, who's the head of marketing. And we're here in the background to help you and support you. If you have any questions at all, if you have any technical difficulties, please make sure you drop it in the chat box, and we will be here to help you out. And just to introduce you to Jason Marshall, who is a senior national consultant at McGraw Hill. Thank you, Jason, for joining us today.
Always a pleasure to be with you.
It's really early for you. It's 6 a.m. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, anytime.
And you can see the background of what Jason has done on your screen, but just a short overview. Like I said, he's done a lot of numerous presentations and workshops across the United States and other countries as well. And the good thing is, or my favorite thing is, Jason deals a lot with dynamic presentations and a lot of technology, how you can integrate it in your classrooms. And the approach is very high energy, kind, and fun. So science is fun. And I think that's what I look forward to from this session today as well. Thank you, Jason, again.
Thank you. All right. So let's ready for me to. Okay.
Yes, I will stop sharing my screen. I just want to let you know that there are just a few Q&As that come in usually, which is you will get a certificate for this session after the session. And this session is being recorded. So you will also get a recording of this webinar as well. So in case, just watch out for that email and then you will have the recording. Yeah, there you go. Please send me the recording. Yes, we'll make sure we send you the recording and the certificate of this session as well. What else is in FAQ? Just make sure we interact with each other. You can see the chat box, ask questions, keep this as interactive as possible. And I think I am going to stop sharing my screen at this point and hand over to Jason. And that's it. If you have any questions, me and Hamad are here in the background. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Suresh. Thank you, Hamad, for being on here. Hamad will be answering questions in the chat. And let's go ahead and begin. Thank you, everyone, for joining this session. Really appreciate you being here. We're going to talk about small steps to head in an NGSS direction. What small steps can I take daily? I encounter so many teachers around the country and really around the world that are very intimidated by the changes that are coming to their district and the changes that NGSS means in their classroom. And I always like to share just some small steps you could head to heading that direction. Powerful ways, really small but powerful ways you could head in that direction. It's not as intimidating as it might seem. And there are some best practices that you could choose to do now. And so I'm going to talk about those. But before I do that, I'd like to start with a Mentimeter. So a Mentimeter is a response tool, and I want you to grab your phone. And I'm going to have you go to a website here. So I'm going to launch this Mentimeter, and we're going to get your ideas on a few things. So you're going to go to menti.com on your phone, and it's going to ask you for a code. And here is the code that I want you to put in there. And I'm going to have 3 questions for you. And the first question is, When you think of NGSS or 3D instruction, what words come to mind? And you could put a couple words in there, and it's going to make sort of a word cloud here on the screen. So what words come to mind? Is it inquiry? Is it exploration? Is it fun? What words come to mind when you think of NGSS or 3D instruction? And so we'll give it a few moments for everybody's responses to start kicking in. And if you know these word clouds, the responses that come in the most will be a little bit bigger and darker and more pronounced on the screen. So we'll give this a little bit to register here. There we go. Integration, real life, opportunities, inquiry. Inquiry seems to be the biggest one so far. And I think you could put more than one word if you'd like. So if you got multiple words, feel free to put them in there. Opportunities, interactive, real life, I see in there. It's getting pretty big. Curiosity, I like that one. NGSS 3D classroom should be very full of curiosity and creativity and student-generated questions. Very good. Okay. What else do we have? Innovation. Let me take a look at some other small one. Project-based. I think you're absolutely right. Student choice, problem solving, differentiation. Interactive seems to be the biggest one so far. Inquiry, real life, all very good suggestions. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing your ideas on that. I think these are all how we think of NGSS classrooms. It should be student-centered, students generating their own questions, talking about science, interactive with science. Okay, very good. I'm going to go to the second one on this poll. Okay, this is just a poll to get your idea and thoughts. So in this one, is there a practice you did while remote teaching and learning, and maybe some of you are still doing that, asynchronous learning, that you would like to continue doing even now that students are back in class? What is it? Did you figure something out, or do you all of a sudden like something when you were remote teaching that you go, you know what? Even when my students get back in class, I'm going to have them doing this. I'm going to still have them doing this. What is it? Kahoot. Yes, we're going to do a Kahoot today. Kahoot is a great tool in our classroom. Digital stations, watching video, quiz. Okay. Bamboozle. I haven't heard of Bamboozle. I'm going to look that one up. Flipped learning. We're going to talk a little bit about flipped learning today. Project-based learning. Very good. Quizzes. Excellent. Let me scroll down here. Digital stations, interactive simulator, PhET virtual simulations. Those are a McGraw Hill partner, by the way. Great tool. Nearpod. I know a lot of teachers that use it. Flipgrid videos. Very good. Independent research, PBLs, word walls. I bet you that's a K-5 teacher, but not certain that's a K-5 teacher. Virtual labs. A lot of virtual labs being done remotely, and those are great tools to be done in asynchronous instruction. I found a lot of teachers learned some things that they want to continue to do now that students are back in school. And that's great. And flipped learning is a big part of it. You can get a lot done outside of class and free up that class for more project-based inquiry experiences. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Edpuzzle, Edmodo. Very good. Thank you very much for letting those come in. Use technology more in general. I think we all started doing that quite a bit over this last 2 years. In a forced way, seesaw, puzzle. Okay, very good. I've got one more question for you. Okay? We're going to do a rating. It's a different type of question here. How would you rate your classroom, not your entire campus, but your Pacific classroom on the following statements? And be very honest. I'm not tracking these. There's no way to track this. My classroom is full of scientific discourse. Okay. I start my lessons with phenomena and a driving question. I regularly check for misconceptions in my science classroom. Okay. How would you rate yourself? Very good. I think we got some very honest feedback here. Okay. Not everybody's a 5 on all of these. We try to do our best. Looks like a lot of the folks are somewhere in the middle, maybe heading over towards the right a little bit. Getting students talking in the classroom can be a challenge sometimes. How do we do that? You know, there typically has to be a vehicle or a format or a structure to get that conversation heading in the right direction. Looks like a lot of more folks are starting with phenomena and driving question. Very good. And misconceptions, somewhere in the middle. Okay. Very good. Very good. Thank you, everybody, for contributing to that that Mentimeter. I'm going to pop out of there. And I'm going to come back in the presentation. Thank you for giving me your thoughts and sharing those with everybody. So we're going to talk about some of those themes today in this presentation. This presentation is on small steps that I can take to head in that direction. And over the course of this presentation, I'm going to ask you to contribute in the chat, just like Suresh had you doing earlier. So have that chat ready to kind of share your thoughts on some of the themes we come up with. There will be a Kahoot at the end, and in that Kahoot, there'll be some door prizes for the winners. And these are books from one of our exclusive authors, whose name is Paige Keeley. And so those will be waiting at the end. And the vehicle for delivery of those will be a Kahoot. Many of you are familiar with Kahoot. We're going to do a Kahoot at the end. And by the way, there will be questions from that Kahoot from this session. And if I think of a theme that will be on that Kahoot, I'll try to give you a little hint. Like you may want to remember that for that Kahoot. I might say hint, hint, wink, wink, or something like that. And that will tell you, you know what, I better remember that. And that'll be a part of the Kahoot. So the first thing I'd like to do is start with a little quiz. We started with a Mentimeter. I'm going to start with a little quiz as well. And I'd like for you to, in the chat, name some STEM pioneers. Think of all the STEM pioneers we've learned about growing up. Okay, well, some great STEM pioneers out there. I want you to see if you can identify these. And we're going to have some practice problems, and then we're going to do a challenge problem. So here's a practice problem. Can you name the STEM pioneer? Maybe one of the greatest ever. Who is this STEM pioneer? Anybody recognize this one? Go ahead and put that in the chat if you think you could recognize this STEM pioneer. I see a Newton. Newton, very good. Isaac Newton is exactly who this is. You are correct if you said Newton or thought Newton. Now, I got a second practice problem. Who is this STEM pioneer? Anybody recognize this person? Who might this STEM pioneer be? Curie. I see Madame Curie, absolutely right. Nobel Prize winner with her work on radioactivity. Very good. And how about this STEM pioneer? We've got a lot of curve breakers out here. A lot of people know these STEM pioneers. We've got a smart group. How about this STEM pioneer? Anybody recognize this STEM pioneer? American inventor and botanist. Think peanuts. Anybody recognize this? STEM pioneer? George Washington Carver, American botanist, inventor, STEM pioneer. So now that we have the practice problems, let's do a challenge problem. Who is this STEM pioneer? Now this one you probably don't know, but I'm going to give you a clue as to who the STEM pioneer is. We're going to do it through a Jeopardy problem here. So the categories are NGSS, literary integration, STEM pioneers, science engineering practices, and cross-cutting concepts. Who is this STEM pioneer? You probably know this guy's products and what he developed, but you just don't think you do just yet. Let's hear STEM pioneers for 100. An urban myth once said this popular substance, combined with Coca-Cola, would make a person's stomach explode. What's the answer to this question? What popular substance? Mentos, I see, but there's not quite Mentos. I heard that was a myth for Mentos as well, but there's a clue in the question, popular. There's another substance that was an urban myth would make your stomach explode. Peppermint? No, not quite peppermint. Popular substance. Chewing gum, bicarbonate, Henry Food, aspirin. Very close, sugar. You're getting there. This person developed Pop Rocks. Pop Rocks are also rumored to make your stomach explode. This is a candy substance, and in it is pressurized carbon dioxide. When put in your mouth, it would make your stomach explode. This gentleman's name is William A. Mitchell. He's a food chemist. Who knew there was such a profession? And he was a food chemist for the General Mills Corporation for over 30 years. He was integral in our World War II effort. He created this tapioca substance that they named after him. They called it the Mitchell Mud. And he created some other substances that you may recognize. Now, many of you may recognize Pop Rocks from way back in the day. But how about this? Back in the 80s, there was nothing more refreshing than a cold glass of water with this orange powdery substance mixed in it. What was that orange powdery substance? If you said Tang, you would be correct. William A. Mitchell created Tang at the General Mills Corporation. What else did William A. Mitchell create? Well, summertime dessert. Every mom makes it. It hardens in their refrigerator. William A. Mitchell created quick-set Jell-O at his time in the General Mills Corporation. And what else did William A. Mitchell create at the General Mills Corporation? Well, I bet you we have some really good cooks and maybe some bakers in the audience. And if you're real ambitious over the holidays, you maybe make some real whipped cream. But if you're short on time, you may make some Cool Whip. William A. Mitchell created all of these creations. And who knew there was a profession called a food chemist? And he was one of them. He's a lesser known STEM pioneer. Now, our goal in our science classroom, hopefully, is to create the next Newton, the next Madame Curie, Marie Curie, or Carver, or lesser known STEM pioneers like William A. Mitchell. But it's hopefully, most of all, to give students a love and appreciation, and most of all, a proficiency at science. Because the world is changing really fast. Students aren't prepared for 21st century careers. United States, our global ranking is slipping in math and science. And even students that go into college with a STEM degree in mind, they often don't persevere and finish that STEM career. And that's a problem. That's what we've all called the STEM crisis. We also know that 65% of our elementary students will have a career that hasn't even been invented yet. We know that if they get a STEM career, they're going to earn more than non-STEM degree holders, but hiring managers are having the hardest time filling these positions. And that's the situation we're in right now. And enter the next generation science standards, which is an attempt to get our students ready for the future that awaits them. And so that's the setup for small steps. That's where we're at. And what have been your small steps? I'm going to have you share some of your thinking, as we have already in the chat just a little bit. So I've got about 4 small steps that I'm going to talk about. And one is know your standards. What is three-dimensional learning? Now, it has nothing to do with this, as you know. It has nothing to do with a 3D movie theater or 3D glasses. It's all about the integration of the 3 dimensions. And for some of you, you know this, and for others, this kind of still may be sort of fresh and new in your mind. So I know we've got a pretty large audience. And so those 3 dimensions are the core ideas, which are fewer subjects taught in greater detail. Not as much breadth, but fewer subjects taught in greater detail. We're going to go deeper into some core ideas. The second dimension is the science and engineering practices. These are the skills that we want students to have in our classroom. Skills like analyzing, interpreting data, developing models, carrying out investigations, engaging in argument from evidence. Now, the third dimension is cross-cutting concepts. I typically find this is the dimension most teachers are less familiar with integrating. We've done a lot of those practices, and we've always had those core ideas in one way or another. But how do we integrate cause and effect, and stability and change, and scale and proportion, and talk about patterns? How do we meaningfully do that in our classroom? I have a lot of teachers and customers that tell me, used to tell me, not so much these days, but they'd say, you know what, Jason? These science engineering practices, I've done these for years. It's just like the scientific method. The first poster I had in my classroom was the scientific method. And a lot of teachers have it still in their classroom. And there's nothing wrong with the scientific method. And the scientific method and NGSS science engineering practices can coexist, but there are differences. They are not the same, like this teacher or several teachers have shared with me. One of the big differences is identifying problems and designing solution. There's an engineering component to these science and engineering practices that we didn't see in the scientific method. The other one is engaging in argumentation from evidence. We've done some of this in our science classroom over the years, but how do we really get students to engage in scientific discourse and argumentation? We're going to talk about a couple tools today. I've heard NGSS described this way, kind of like a piece of cake, where you have the performance expectation as the cake. And the analogy that is used is that the science engineering practices are the baking tools, things like a sift and a grater and measuring tools. And the cake are the core ideas, and the frosting is the cross-cutting concepts. Now, this analogy, it never really resonated with me. I've seen it used in many trainings, nationally, and it comes from the California Academy of Sciences, and I've seen it used in many NGSS training sessions. And if this resonates with you, that is great. But what always resonated with me was a different quote. The disciplinary core ideas are what scientists and engineers know. The science and engineering practices are what scientists and engineers do. And the cross-cutting concepts are how scientists and engineers think. Now, when I heard someone describe it this way, it all of a sudden clicked, and it all of a sudden made sense to me. The science and practices are what we want our students to do. Core ideas are what we want our students to know, and the cross-cutting concepts are how we want our students to think. And that made a difference to me. So I'd like for you to really quickly share in chat, what has helped you most in understanding these NGSS standards? Was it a document that you encountered? Was it a website? Was it a guiding principle or training? And I'm going to share a few of mine here in just a little bit. What's helped you the most in understanding these standards? Go ahead and put that in the chat. Was there a specific document? What kind of training? I see some say a document, some say training. Elaborate on that. What kind of a website was it? Was it, just tell us a little bit more about what's helped you become more familiar with it. I've heard a lot of people say it was a training or something I found online. Training, very good. Training has helped a lot of people. Very good. NASA, okay, interesting. Walking through the standards, I see a tutorial with some demo. Very good. Thank you all for sharing all those thoughts on what has helped you the most. Well, let me share a couple of the things that's helped me the most. There are a couple documents that I encountered, and by the way, you're going to receive these in a toolkit. There's going to be a toolkit that comes after this. And here's one on the cross-cutting concepts. And I call it the pesky dimension because it's the one I think teachers are less likely or less familiar with integrating. And I encountered this a while back. Let me hide my Zoom floating window there. And it should have some practical strategies for how to integrate these practices. Okay, and you're going to receive this at the end of this training. And so let's say when we're talking about observing data, here are questions that you can ask as a teacher to get students to start thinking about these cross-cutting concepts, whether it's patterns of observable data, whether it's cause and effect, structure and function, whatever cross-cutting concepts you're working with in your lessons. These are questions that you could integrate. What caused the patterns you observed? How would you think blank caused blank? And so sometimes it helps to have a tip, strategy, or suggestion for the inclusion of this third dimension cross-cutting concept, because they're not easy. We've got to integrate them in some way, and sometimes it's hard to do that. This document gives you really practical strategies for integrating these cross-cutting concepts into each and every lesson. And once you start getting familiar with some of these questioning strategies, and there's a ton of questions for each one of these cross-cutting concepts, you'll start getting familiar with the themes involved and how we're getting students to think deeper. Now, I have this for cross-cutting concepts, and I also have one for science and engineering practices. So let me hide this Zoom menu here and scroll down here. So if you're looking for really practical strategies to get students to start doing the things that scientists and engineers do and thinking the way they think, here's another document that's going to help you quite a bit. Science engineering practices and cross-cutting concepts. The other thing that helped me very well is learning from somebody else's journey. By the way, you're going to get this PowerPoint as well. It will be shared out at the end. And in it are links. So here's one of the hyperlinks that I've embedded. And I encountered this, this blog a teacher put together. Okay? And I want to share this with you. If you scroll down here, she started in NGSS instruction back in 2014. And she started creating this blog with her observations and her experiences all along the way. And if I go to, well, it starts right here in 2014. If I go to one of these dates, you'll see her thoughts on this. And so here's her thoughts on let's say modeling. Are you, as you look at modeling in your classroom, ask yourself these questions. Do all the students' models look alike? If so, it's probably not a real model. Are the students using the model for something beyond just creating it? If not, you're probably just doing a craft activity. And I started listening to, reading this blog. I'm going, that makes a lot of sense. And she's sharing her thoughts. She's going to trainings all along the way and sharing her thoughts in this blog. And it's a really fun read. And I encourage you all to read it. It goes pretty quickly. As you can see, it starts here in July of 14. And her last entry is December 2020, almost 6 years later. And I think you can get through these pretty fast. And that quote that I shared with you that really resonated with me, and then I've taken to trainings all over the world now, this is where I found it. The science and engineering practices are what scientists and engineers do. The cross-cutting concepts are how scientists and engineers think. And the disciplinary core ideas are how scientists and engineers know, what scientists and engineers know. I found it here on this blog. And so learning from someone else's journey was a big part of me helping on these standards. And this is a link that you'll have available to you. And I encourage you to go to it and read those entries. I think it'll be an incredible homework assignment for you after this training. Now, how does our program, Inspire Science, help teachers make that integration successfully? Well, let's take a quick look here. We got a new Inspire Science program, and we do some color coding in our program. Teachers have told us this color coding has been incredibly helpful. So the standards are color coded. The blue are the practices, the orange is the core ideas, and the green are the cross-cutting concepts. So in our program, in our alignment documents, we color code those standards, sharing exactly where those standards are addressed and found in the program. We show things like disciplinary core idea progressions, and the same document exists for the cross-cutting concepts and science discipline practices, letting teachers know where students have been prior to their grade band. This is for middle school, what students are going to learn in their grade band, and then where they're going next. So having this color coding throughout the program has been extremely helpful. In fact, let's say in grade 5, I'm a student learning about modeling a food chain in a food web. Well, in the student edition, I see in the student edition the color coding. I'm going to develop a model of a food web. That's the science and engineering practice in blue. The core idea is I'm going to use that model to share my understanding of the connections among living things. That's the core idea for this lesson. And in green, the cross-cutting concept. I'm going to demonstrate the flow of matter and energy as it moves across the food web. This color coding of and unpacking visually of the performance expectations and the 3 dimensions, not just in the student edition, but also in the teacher's edition, is a big Inspire Science difference. A lot of programs do it in the teacher's edition. Our program does it in the student edition as well. And it has helped teachers around the country and around the world become more familiar with those standards much more quickly. Let's continue with this training. The next thing I'm going to share with you is just start leading with phenomena. If I saw on the poll, many of you are right now, but if you're one of those that said you're not currently doing it consistently, try leading with phenomena. Phenomena, this is an equip rubric, and as you can see, the equip rubric is designed to measure and evaluate NGSS programs. And you can see that word phenomena comes up quite a bit in this. It's really important with NGSS standards. Think about how we taught science 10, 15 years ago. Students were probably typically reading. They'd have some activities. And maybe we had this really cool activity on Thursday or Wednesday. But it was later on in the week. Why not front load the lesson with that really cool activity or visual? Have that guide the instruction moving forward. It's almost just reversing things. Start with that discrepant event, start with that interesting scenario. We call it a phenomenon, and have it guide things moving forward. It's just what we've been doing in the past, just switched around a little bit and brought to the front. So what are good phenomena? Phenomena is simply an observable event. Phenomena add relevance to the science classroom, showing students science in their own world. And a good phenomena is observable, interesting, complex, and aligned to appropriate standards. But a phenomena doesn't necessarily need to be phenomenal. Like this. Is this a phenomena? Is this a phenomenon? Yeah, sure it is. Why not? This is a phenomenon that could be used, let's say, in the elementary grades. Because something is clearly wrong with this plant. What's wrong with it? Is it getting too much sunlight, not enough sunlight? Is it getting too much water or not enough water? Why isn't it thriving? And this could launch a lesson on what plants need to thrive and survive. So sure, this could be a phenomenon. It's a phenomenon. It's not phenomenal, but it makes a great phenomena. So a phenomena can be an image. What else can be a phenomenon? Well, it could be a series of images. Let's take a look at this one. Now, many teachers don't recognize this tree, and it's pretty big. You can see there's some people down here at the bottom. This is a mustard tree. That mustard tree, can you believe it, came from a seed that small? Now, how is that possible? So the phenomenon is this tremendous tree is huge compared with the seed in which it came from. And a phenomenon should always be paired with a driving question. Where did that mass come from? How could that happen? So a phenomenon could be an image, it could be a series of images. We probably have some bakers in the room, and cookies is one of my favorite desserts. And we've all been in the house where the cooking is taking place in the kitchen, but we could smell it across the house in the bedroom. How is that possible? Where's that coming from? I can't see that smell. I can't shine a light on it, but that smell is certainly traveling over the course of the room. And we know this is diffusion, but that scenario could set up a lesson. It can serve as a phenomenon. Phenomena can also be a video. Let's take a look at this one. Did you catch that? Let's try this again. 2 arrows pointing to the left. Now that image has changed a little bit. Many of us think of phenomena only being videos, and videos make great phenomena, by the way, but a video can be an image, a series of images, and it could be a video. Let's take a look at another video. Now, we look at this object, and this looks familiar to us. And we say, you know, I've seen one of these before. And you have some ideas of the structure of this image. So if you probably think, okay, that's a really solid, sturdy object. Boy, if I took a running start and tried to punch that object, my hand would probably break. It's really that hard, that sturdy. I couldn't move it if I tried to push it. Probably couldn't even move it with my vehicle. Well, let's take a look and see what's about to take place.
760. Gewonnen hat Herr Dr.
Now, what on earth is causing that phenomena? So phenomena can be an image, a series of images, or a really cool video. Here's one I like to show in presentations.
Yes! All right.
He was pretty proud of his accomplishment there. And the phenomenon is a singer being able to shatter his glass with his voice. And why the driving question is, why was the singer able to do this? And a phenomena can head a bunch of different directions and have students learn about science that way. But we begin with that phenomena. We start that and we have it drive the learning. Now, phenomena can be an image, a series of images, a video. It can also be an activity. And when I'm in trainings with teachers, I typically do this with teachers, and they can do this live. But I'm just going to show this to you on video instead, since we're not together. And many of you may have done this in your classroom. Magic bag trick. Let's take a look at it. So we're going to have a bag. We're going to have some pencils and some water. Let's see what happens. So why didn't that water drop? Why didn't it spill? Not one drop spilled. That could serve as a phenomenon. And there's probably an expectation by would it be an expectation by students that there will be spillage somewhere, but it didn't. Is there something special about the water? Is that a special or magic bag? Or are these special pencils? What's going on there? And that's actually could be a really good high school lesson. This is some great high school science going in here. It could be a middle school lesson as well. So a phenomena can be an image, a phenomena could be a series of images, a phenomena could be a video, a phenomena could be an activity. Don't think it could be just one of those things. It could be many of those things. And by the way, that will be a quiz question on the Kahoot. So you've got great flexibility in the phenomena that you choose. And one way to get this activate this driving question storyboard, driving question idea is through a driving question storyboard. Post that driving question. And then all the smaller questions that students must answer in order to understand this larger question. And then have students generate their own questions along the way and put them on sticky notes. Now, big part of successful NGSS classrooms is students generating their own questions and curiosity about what they're learning. So have them post them, and then we'll revisit this over the course of this module or lesson. So how does Inspire Science deal with phenomena? Let's take a quick look. I'll give you just a few examples. Here is a 4th grade lesson, Information Processing and Transfer. This is all about how humans communicate and how animals communicate. And is it possible we communicate in similar ways? It says, how does a lighthouse transmit a message across a distance? It says, go online to see this video, clicks and echoes to see this phenomena in action. Now, phenomena can be hard to find good ones, right? Ones that spark curiosity. Sometimes they can be hard to find. Let's take a look at this one. And this is a 3D phenomena that I can manipulate with my cursor. So I'm going to move things around and change your perspective along the way. So here we have a diver, and something's making some noise down there. Let's take a look here. Oh, we've got some dolphins down there. And they're clearly communicating in some way. And some questions students might have is, if they're communicating, do they have a language? If they have a language, does that mean they have an alphabet of sorts? Do all dolphins speak the same language? By that I mean, does a dolphin in the Atlantic Ocean speak the same language as a dolphin in the Pacific Ocean? How do they perceive their language? I listen through my ears and then my brain makes sense of it. I don't see ears on this dolphin. How do they do that? So these are questions students will have, and good phenomena will spark student-generated questions. Every one of our lessons and modules in Inspire Science begins with one. I know we have some high school teachers on the call. Let's take a look at one from high school. This is learning about matter. This is in physical science. And the scenario here is, by the way, before I go to high school, here's middle school. What conditions, this is what you see here is a phenomenon taking place. Is it possible for a substance to both freeze and boil at the same time? It seems impossible, but there is a point called the triple point, where at a certain set of temperature and pressure conditions, liquid nitrogen will both freeze and boil at the same time. So this is an interesting phenomenon. How is that possible? And this launches a middle school lesson on what conditions are needed for a substance to freeze, boil, and tame. This is classifications and states of matter in middle school. And high school, could a person really disappear into a pit of quicksand? And this is a video for high school teachers, students to watch. Let's take a quick look at this one. That phenomena video will go on to test the effect quicksand could have on the body and how much pressure it would take to pull someone out of quicksand. So phenomena could take many different forms: an image, a video, which we saw here, or a series of videos. And if you're looking for good phenomena, we have them in Inspire Science. And I've also shared with you some other links into this presentation. Many of you are familiar with NGSSphenomena.com and you may use it in your classroom right now. But I have some other links in here that will share with you some great phenomena that you could start using right now and integrating in your classroom. All of these are links to hundreds of phenomena that you can find online that I've sort of curated over the course of time. Third strategy, third small step I want to talk about is identifying misconceptions. And maybe even more important than that, have students talking about them and sharing their ideas. And one way to do that is through an experience called a Page-Keeley probe. Paige Keeley is a former president of NSTA. She's a wildly successful author, and our Kahoot prize will be one of her books that she's written. And she's known for creating these scenarios that students have to consider and decide what they think the best answer is. And it's just a vehicle to uncover misconceptions and get students talking. That's really what a Page-Keeley probe is. It's an activity, it's a video to uncover misconceptions and get students talking. It doesn't have anything to do with a probe the way we're used to thinking of it. It's just a strategy. Here are some of the Page-Keeley books and that will be up for grabs for the prize. And why is it important to uncover student ideas? Why should we do it at all? Let's hear Paige tell why it's important in her own words.
The formative assessment probes are purposely designed to mirror the research on what we know is the nature of children's thinking in science. We know from the research that in science, children do not come to their learning as blank slates or empty heads that we fill with information, facts, and terminology. We know that they actually come to their learning with some already preformed ideas, which may not be scientifically accurate, but these ideas often come from their everyday experiences, their interactions with the natural world. One that's particularly strong is students' ideas about the phases of the moon. A very common misconception that even many adults have is that the phases of the moon are caused by the shadow of the earth cast on the moon. And if you understand the nature of children's thinking, that idea makes perfect sense, because think back to the time, even as a young child, when you play outside and you notice the sun is shining and the sun shines on an object and that object blocks that sunlight, students observe that there's a shadow that's cast, a dark shadow cast after that object. So students often use experiences like that to explain other phenomena. So it's very reasonable for students to come to their learning thinking that the phases of the moon are caused by the shadow of the earth cast on the moon, which is a misconception. But it's important to understand that the nature of children's thinking actually comes from a lot of their everyday interactions with the natural world. And since science is about constructing understanding of our natural world, we've had a lot of interactions already before we come to school. So it's very important to take these into account and understand that there are ideas that our students already have formed inside their heads. But the important part to keep in mind is they get stronger and stronger and stronger the longer that they remain. So it's important to uncover them first and then figure out how to move students from that misconception to that scientific understanding. Otherwise, the misconceptions they have in elementary school will follow them into middle school and into high school and right into adulthood, which is why it's no wonder that if you go out on the street and interview adults, many adults will tell you that the phases of the moon are caused by the shadow of the earth.
So misconceptions can be tenacious things. So you should address them early, maybe even before engage in the 5E lesson model. And so let's do a few probes here, these scenarios. Now, if you've been on my sessions, you've seen me use maybe one of these, and hopefully I'll share a couple new ones with you today. But here's one I like to start everybody off on that hasn't seen a probe before. And it's called the mitten probe. And the scenario is this: Sarah's science class is investigating heat energy. And they wonder what would happen to the temperature reading on the thermometer if they put the thermometer inside of a mitten. Sarah's group obtained 2 thermometers and a mitten. They put one thermometer inside the mitten and the other thermometer on the table next to the mitten. An hour later, they compared the readings on the 2 thermometers. The temperature in the room remained the same throughout the experiment. What do you think Sarah's group will discover from their investigation? Circle the response that best matches your thinking. If you need a place to envision this taking place, imagine it taking place in the room you're in right now over this last hour. Do you think that A, the thermometer inside the mitten will have a lower temperature reading than the thermometer on the table? Do you think that B, the thermometer inside the mitten, will have a higher temperature reading than the thermometer on the table? Or do you think that C, both thermometers will have the same temperature reading? In chat, I'd like for you to do this. Don't tell me what you think. Tell me what you think students will think and why. Just put a little short explanation in chat. Will they choose A, B, or C? And why will they choose A, B, or C? Why would they choose that one? What do you think students will choose? A, B, or C? And just a short explanation why. Helba said A, okay. I said Noreen B. Noreen says B as well. B, I could see B, mittens make our hand warmer. I could totally see students saying that. Let me see what else we have here. Okay, insulation concepts. Mittens are insulators. Okay, I've got some A's, I see some B's, and I can see some C's. Now, if I was with you today, I might use like a finger. If I wish you with you and I had like say 30 of you in my class, I might use a finger underneath the chin strategy. Where if you think the best answer is A, I want you to put 1 finger underneath your chin. If you think the best answer is B, put 2 fingers underneath your chin. If you think the best answer is C, put 3 fingers underneath your chin. And how I'd scan the room, I'd say, look at me the whole time. That's what makes it anonymous, right? No sneaking a peek at your classroom. And Paige will tell you, hey, if they choose A, this is what they're probably thinking and where it comes from. And if they choose B, this is what they're probably thinking and where it comes from. And if they choose C, this is what they're thinking and where it likely comes from. And the idea with the probes is not to give them the best answer at the beginning of the lesson. Paige would say, let them hang out in uncertainty for a while. Let them grapple with this. Let them struggle with this. Let them work on it a little bit. The shift to NGSS is instead of students learning about science, they're figuring things out. You keep hearing that term, figuring things out in the NGSS world. And the Page Keeley probe is a tremendous scenario to get that process started. So never give them the correct answer, or at least not at the beginning, let them work on this a little bit. Here's another one for you. And I want you to think of what students will think on this one. Sam washed his favorite pair of jeans. He hung the jeans on a clothesline outside. An hour later, the jeans were dry. Which answer best describes what happened to the water that was in the jeans? What happened to it? So we've got A through G as the answer choice. It soaked into the ground. Again, I want you to tell me what students, you think students are going to think. And give me a short explanation why. Just like a few words or something where this might be coming from. I'd like for you to go ahead and put that in the chat. What do you think students are going to choose in this scenario? Now, the answers might differ, K5 to 6, 8, and 9, 12. I understand that. And this is a K5 probe, by the way. I see D. I see some Ds. C evaporates as water vapor. Very good, Rena. Thank you, Rena, for sharing that. D related to the water cycle. Okay, I see some Ds. I see some Bs. It disappeared and no longer exists. Especially in K5, I can totally see my students in K5 saying it disappeared and no longer exists. We can see students saying that. I can see students saying, thinking a lot of these. And these probes will provide answers that, that students are likely to have. And with the misconceptions they're likely to bring. Now, a lot of you chose D. It moved up into the clouds as what students might think. And where are they getting that? Where are they getting that idea that it moved up to the clouds? And if you're thinking the water cycle, you're absolutely right. Where does water go in the water cycle? It has this arrow that just beelines, goes straight up to the cloud, doesn't pass go, when it actually kind of hangs around a little while in the form of water vapor. So some of these misconceptions can come from our own classroom, just for students not completely understanding the concept. And this is an example of one of them. I've got another probe here, and this is one I want you to decide what you think the best answer is, okay? Here's the scenario, okay? Why am I showing this chicken here? Here's a high school one, by the way. The students in Mrs. Bartoli's class were studying how chickens develop from an egg. The students put a dozen freshly laid fertilized eggs in an incubator. They wondered what would happen to the weight of an egg as the chick developed inside. This is what the students thought. Group A says, I think an egg will gain weight. An egg weighs more just before hatching than it does when it's laid, okay? B, Group B says, we think the egg will lose weight. An egg weighs less before hatching than when it was laid. Or C, there'll be no difference in the weight of the egg. So do you think the egg will weigh the most right after it's laid? Do you think the egg will weigh the most right before it hatches, right before that chick is going to peck out of here? Do you think it will weigh the most then? Or do you think it will, there'll be no difference in the weight of the egg throughout the course of this situation? What do you think students will think? Or what do you think the correct answer is, a person? Keep that in mind. Go ahead and write it down to the side, and this will be on the Kahoot. I want you to share your answers in the Kahoot. So what do we do about the right answer? Why don't we give them the correct answer at the beginning? Let's have Paige share her thoughts on that just a little bit. I shared a little bit of what her thinking is. Let's hear it in her own words.
After students have responded to a probe, what do you do when students ask you, what's the right answer? Now, of course, all the students want to know what the right answer is because the probes are engaging and intrinsically interesting to them. But I think the important thing to take away is that you don't want to give them the answer right away. You want students to, what I call, hang out in uncertainty for a while and keep thinking about it. Because once you give them the answer, the thinking stops, and you want students to keep thinking. Sometimes it takes several lessons or several days before students have all the conceptual pieces to put together to understand what the best answer is. Now, notice the language that I just used. I didn't say the right answer. I said the best answer. And I think it's really important for you to change your language. Instead of referring to right or wrong answers, we should always be thinking about, here's our best thinking so far. Here's the best answer I have at this point. It also mirrors the nature of science, because even scientists change their thinking as they get more information. So we always want to use the terminology of the best answer, not what the right answer is, but what's the best answer that explains our thinking. And to hold off on giving students the answer right away, let them grapple with it. Let them work on it. Let them struggle with it. And it creates that desire to know. And that's what we want to have happen in our classroom. Students who are really interested in finding out the answers.
So the best practice with the probe is having students share their thinking with you, so you can get an idea of what misconceptions they have. Then have them share their thinking amongst each other, engaging in some argumentation from evidence, creating this atmosphere of scientific discourse in your classroom. And then it creates a desire to know. Students will want to figure it out, and it sort of supercharges your lesson at the beginning. And so some discussion, some question prompts that you could use to get students to talk more. Just tools like, can you tell me a little bit more about that? I'm curious, where have you seen that before? So get them, a lot of times students will clam up, they don't want to share as much, so you kind of have to prod them in the right direction. Where did your idea come from? Let me see if I'm hearing correctly. Are you saying that? And so keep these question strategies going. Now in Inspire Science, what you will find are probes as well. So let's take a quick look at this in Inspire Science. Here's some anchoring phenomena, some driving question storyboards in Inspire Science. I failed to show that to you earlier. But here's a probe in grade 4. This one's on animal eyes. Two friends were talking about animal eyes. They noticed that animals that are active at night have very large eyes, and this is what they said. Animals like owls have large eyes to help them see in the dark. They do not need light to see. And Jaden said animals like owls have large eyes to help them see in the dark, but they still need some light to see. The answer students give is not the most important part of the probe. It's always the explanation and that discussion with their classmates and that struggle to figure it out. That is the important part. It's not the answer. It's not designed to be necessarily, it's not designed to be a summative assessment tool. It's designed to be a formative assessment tool. And formative assessment should be assessment for learning, not assessment of learning. We do that at the beginning of the lesson. In this particular scenario, you can imagine what students are thinking. Charles says, I agree with Jaden because I think owls are just like people and need light to see. I think their big eyes help them see more light. Okay, Charles, that's a pretty good answer. But other students will have different ideas. Maya said Laura must be right because bats and other animals use sound waves to navigate. So light is not important. I can totally see that. I've seen that on animal shows before. So you can see how students are thinking that. Carson says neither of them are right. Owls have special eyes. They make their own light. So students come into class with these ideas. And it's important to have them share them in their thinking. Now in K5, Inspire Science, we support these with some videos to give you an idea of what students are likely to be thinking coming into the probe. Let's take a look at this one.
We're going to talk about seeing things and how students see things, but I'm going to give you a warning right now. It's going to get dark because I'm going to turn off the lights. So what do students think about how you see things? Let's take a look.
I think your eyes see things because of parts in your body that help your eyes see things. If your eye sockets are good, then you can see them, and you can actually, your eyes can actually tell your brain what color it is. Your eyes are like a mirror. Like, sometimes I do this to my sister, like I'll look in her eyes to see something, and it's so I can see in her eyes, but it's not like on the white part of your eyes. It's not on it's like somewhere on the brown part and sometimes on your black thing. I know what that's called. Just won't come to my mind, but it's you can see through that too.
One time I watched a video about eyes, and in the back of it there's like this little flashlight that lets you see everything, and I think that that's the little white thing that's in your eye that lets you see everything.
You can see in the video that students have different ideas about how they see things. A common idea is this idea of vision, where the eyes actually send stuff out to grab something and bring it back in some way. But the idea that is about the eyes. And really it's about the light. So let me show you this diagram.
So this is one video of many that we have in the Inspire Science program that talks about misconceptions that students have and shows you what students are likely to think coming into these scenarios. There are also videos that support different strategies that you might use with the probe, like the sticky note strategy as one of them. Probes are found in K through 5. Probes are also found in middle school. So here's an example of a middle school one. The mystery substance. 4 friends were arguing about how they could identify a substance. What substance makes up an object? They have different ideas of how you could do this. And so different ways of testing that substance is considered. High school has probes as well. And here's an example of one from physics in the Inspire Science program. Some quantities in physics describe both magnitude and direction. Which of these statements describe both magnitude and direction? And again, this is an idea of get an idea of what students are thinking coming into the lesson. Does a car driving at 60 miles an hour describe both magnitude and direction? How about wind coming from the northwest at 20 kilometers per hour? Students will check which ones they think describe both magnitude and direction. And so these experiences are found in the Inspire Science as well, Inspire Science program, at the beginning of the lesson, each and every lesson. Flip as much as you can is suggestion number 4. I'm going to run just a few minutes late here. I apologize. We'll go for another 8 minutes or so. Flip as much as you can. Why? I have found around the country that teachers tell me consistently, as they integrate NGSS, I'm not getting as far in the year in my instruction as I did. In fact, this is a struggle for me. How do I create class time for NGSS instruction? How do I get as far as I need to go, as I'm responsible to go? And flipping as much as you can is one suggestion to do that. And many of us were teaching asynchronously over the last couple of years and learned some strategies for doing that. Let me share with you one that we have. It's an adaptive personalized learning tool that we call LearnSmart. So I'm going to go into my LearnSmart assignment. Adaptive personalized learning, I think, is almost essential in NGSS classroom. Not essential, but I think it's very helpful, let's just say, in NGSS classroom, because it allows you to free up class time for that inquiry, that going deeper, for getting students talking. All that stuff takes time that we weren't doing before. And so what is LearnSmart? LearnSmart in Inspire Science is an adaptive personalized learning tool. When I use the word adaptive, I like to explain what I mean by that. Think of sites like Netflix or Amazon. The more you go to these sites, you're probably getting the impression they're getting to know you a little bit better. Your likes, your dislikes, your preferences. Well, LearnSmart's doing the exact same thing, except it's getting to know what students know and what they don't know. And it's prescribing a pathway to mastery. It starts with this smart book over here. So here I have the book, and the book comes pre-highlighted with the content that's going to be part of this particular experience. So we're going to learn about cytoplasm here. And what else is going to be a part of this? Cytoskeleton. So this is a very narrow LearnSmart assignment, just a few topics. As a teacher, you can decide to make this as focused or as broad as you so choose. And when students are ready and they feel comfortable to be asked questions, they can go to the question section. Now notice that it says, making progress by completing concepts. The number of questions will vary depending upon your individual needs. It's adapting to student performance. Every student will get a different set of questions and maybe different amount of questions depending upon how they answer and if they get the answer correct. It's okay to get questions wrong. You'll still earn 100%. This is not an assessment tool, it's a study tool that helps you flip the classroom. And submit your answers by selecting your confidence level. This will not affect your grade. So I'll say I got it. Which is an environment inside the cell membrane that is a semi-fluid material? I'm going to say cytoplasm. Now, how confident am I? I'm going to say highly confident on this one. Now, LearnSmart is going to track my progress here. So I'm going to, I'm going to choose an answer here. So I'm going to say, and I'm going to say medium confidence. Now, notice what happens. Some of you are probably saying, he's spelling that correctly. Incorrectly. LearnSmart will know that I know the correct answer, but then I just slightly misspelled it. LearnSmart wants to know what I know and what I don't know. Not necessarily if I could spell prokaryotic or eukaryotic 100% of the time, every single time. So it'll give me credit if I get it correct. Now, what happens if I start getting some questions wrong? Let's say there's one question wrong. Let me just do another question wrong. Now, LearnSmart will say, hey, before moving on, you need to go back into this resource. So now I go back into that resource and I need to read a little bit more. And it'll tell me where my struggling areas are, where I need to read. And so this is one tool where students can learn and do some of that reading, some of that stuff maybe we had them doing in class a little bit outside of class and be quizzed. And they can come into class ready for the instruction. Now, how can I implement this as a teacher? Well, let's take a look. I'm going to go to Add Assignment. I'm going to click Smart Book here. And I'm going to give this title, I'm going to go do a new assignment here. What topics do I want to be a part of this assignment? I could choose which topics I want to be a part of this assignment. So let's say it's material science, or how about matter and energy and ecosystems? Okay, so I want those to be a part of the assignment. I click Continue. Now I can choose what specific lessons I want to be a part of the assignment. Let's say, you know what, we didn't get quite to lesson 2 yet. We're still on lesson 1, and I can narrow the scope. I could even narrow the scope over here and reduce the number of concepts that we're going to be a part of this assignment. Or go to lesson and say, you know what, we haven't really got to how synthetic materials are formed, but we did get to the properties of materials, and we certainly got to this. But even within this, I could define this or refine it even more. But this is about the correct assignment that I want. 7 concepts, 8 to 13 minutes, click Continue. And from here, we go into an assignment wizard. The assignment wizard just has some follow-up things. So what do you want to call this? I'll call this Smart Book assignment. When do I want it due? Oh, I'll have this due tomorrow. How many points do I want it to be worth? How about 100 points? And I click Assign. And now students have this experience outside of class that will have them reading, interacting, answering questions, coming in with a certain level of proficiency on the core ideas. And now I have this class time available for exploration and going deeper. LearnSmart is one tool that we use. We have others, but there are other adaptive personalized learning tools as well that will help you flip in your classroom. That's extremely important in NGSS classroom. Now, these are just some small steps that I've shared with you today to have students reach their potential. We want them to be the next Newton, the next Marie Curie, the next lesser known STEM pioneer like William A. Mitchell, and become the next generation of innovators. Now, there's going to be a toolkit shared with you at the end of this as follow-up. In that toolkit will be some activities. There's some PBLs in there, or project-based learning experiences. I believe I have a few web quests in there. That science and engineering practices and cross-cutting concept sheet that I shared with you earlier, that is in there. And there are some other activities that I think you could start using now to head in an NGSS direction. But now, let's see what you remember. Let's go to a Kahoot. And let's go to a Kahoot, and I may have accidentally put that out. Let me go ahead and go to Kahoot real fast. So get your phone ready. We're about to go to Kahoot and do a Kahoot together. And there'll be 5 questions in this Kahoot. Log in real fast here. Sorry, I closed out that window earlier. And I'm going to go to small steps here, and I'm going to click Start. And most of you are familiar with Kahoot. And you're going to go to kahoot.it and you're going to enter your PIN. We are ready to go here. I'm going to give you some time to log in here to kahoot.it and to enter your code. Betty is first to arrive. Thank you, Betty. And here they come. Give you plenty of time to get into this Kahoot. Remember, we're going to have a book as the prizes. I believe we could probably do it for the top 3. We'll give you plenty of time to enter this. I knew this was a large session, so I upgraded my Kahoot account. I'm going to give you plenty of time here. Very good. All right, we're up to 40 some. I know we got more than that here. Got over 200 and some here. So I'm going to give you some more time here. Some of you may not be joining, but I'm going to give you a few more minutes to try to get as many on here as we could possibly get. Got a lot of participants here. Thank you all for joining this session. Hopefully you got a nugget out of it. It's hard when you got K through 12 and some of you are probably NGSS pros and others are just starting, but I try to at least embed some links that I believe all of you will be able to use after the fact. And just to reiterate, I'm going to share this PowerPoint with Suresh and Hamad, and they'll be able to share that PowerPoint with you. And there are hyperlinks embedded within that PowerPoint that I use. So you'll have links to go out to phenomena, to find phenomena. You'll have links to go to that blog that I shared with you. That's an incredible read. It goes pretty quickly. It's interesting. She shares insights every step of the way. And I would start at the beginning and I would go throughout her entire journey of NGSS transition. So we've got 80. I'm just going to give you about 30 more seconds, maybe even less to get on. We have still people joining. We're going to continue ready or not here in just a little bit. This may be the largest Kahoot that I've done with 200 and some participants. So I have no feel for how long it takes 200 and some participants to join. We're going to start here in just a moment. All right, we're going backwards. So let's go to start. Small steps. Question number 1. A phenomena can be presented as only a video, only an image, only a hands-on experience, or all of the above. What do you think is correct? I bet you're going to get this one correct. We offer different ideas of what a phenomena could be in the classroom. If you said all of the above, you're correct. A phenomena could be an image, it could be a video, it could be a hands-on experience, it could be all of the above. Let's see who we've got here is number 1. Right now it's Megan, followed by Heba, followed by JWF. Let's go to the next question here. There's going to be 5 questions. The scientific practices are no different than the scientific method. No different at all. True or false? Are the scientific practices and the scientific methods the same? I don't think they are. What do you think? I think I addressed this in the presentation. Is there no difference? False. There are differences. Those engineering challenges and engaging an argument from evidence. There are some differences between the practices and the scientific method. In the lead is still Megan, followed by Heba and JWF. All right, let's go to question 3. Let's see if somebody can jump this. Benefit of pitch probes include identifying misconceptions, getting students talking, creating desire to know, or is it all of the above? The benefits of probes. I think you're going to get this one right here. All of the above is correct. They get students talking, they identify misconceptions, and they create a desire to know. Danielle has moved up to number 3. Number 1 and 2 are still the same. Let's go to question 4 or 5. True or false? Probes can be used to launch investigations and student exploration. Oh, excuse the spelling here. I forgot to put an L in there. Investigations and student exploration about their ideas. Yes, absolutely right. Danielle has moved up to number 2. And the last question. Yes, we're going to address those probes at the beginning and we're going to revisit them throughout the instruction. So number 3 is Jonah. Congratulations, Jonah. Number 2. Danielle is number 2 and the leader is Megan. Megan, Danielle, and Jonah. We got some runners up, Hershey and Swad, but Megan, Danielle, and Jonah, I'm going to put my email address in the chat. Reach out to me and we'll figure out how to get that to you. That's jason.marshall@mheducation.com. jason.marshall@mheducation.com. I want to thank you everybody for joining this session. We really appreciate you being here. Hopefully you learned a few nuggets that you can take away to bring into your classrooms and make a successful transition to NGSS. Hopefully you saw something that inspires science, that sparked your curiosity. You go, you know what? I want to learn more about that science program because this program was built from the ground up to support phenomena-based 3-dimensional instruction. And I think I can stay here for a minute or two to answer a few questions. Ahmad, do you have any that come off or do we want to close the session out?
No, it's just general comments. But yeah, I think we can close things out. Thank you everyone for joining us. There's another session on math tomorrow at the same time, and we'll keep you posted for the next sessions. Great one, Jason. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. You guys take care. Let us know how we can help.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.